Welcome to Season 4 of Might in Motion, the podcast that champions motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. I'm Marianna Kinnee, your host, bringing you conversations with inspiring leaders and innovators who challenge the status quo and push boundaries in their careers and lives. Whether you're here to grow, lead, or ignite your own journey, we're here to keep you moving forward. Let's dive in. Today, I am really excited to bring to you David Aferiat. He is the founder of Avid Vines, a company dedicated to importing organic, sustainably crafted French champagnes to the U.S. With a dual citizenship in the U.S. and France, he has built strong relationships with the European winemakers and importers, allowing him to curate a portfolio of exceptional low-sulfite wines. His mission is to offer consumers a champagne experience that's luxurious and health-conscious, ensuring wines are transported via chilled containers to preserve quality. Avid Vines was born from David's passion for sustainable living and a desire to offer clean, responsibly sourced wines that allow people to celebrate today and feel great tomorrow. He holds degrees in economics and French from the University of Texas at Austin and an MBA from the Southern Methodist University. His vision for Avid Vines is to become a leading importer of premium organic champagnes by 2027. He's also a growth coach and is the CEO of the Avid Group, where he helps leaders and companies find their best self. I am so excited, David, to have you on Might in Motion. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Marianna. I'm very grateful for the time to talk about what I love most.
You know, I had the privilege of meeting you at an event that was held by a mutual acquaintance of ours, Meredith Moore, here in Atlanta, probably about, it might have been like 3 months ago. It's been a few months since that event happened. It was a great networking opportunity. You put on an absolute show, which was, I'd never seen anybody open the champagne, like the way you did. I mean, it was just so, and I learned so much. I want to know, how you got into that industry, number one. And number two, you're also making a pivot. You still have your vision for the champagne company, but now you want to help leaders across multiple organizations grow and have that same passion within their team. So I'd love to know more about your story and what drove you to make an additional pivot in your career over the past 2 months.
Yeah, so it is all about pivots, and to this audience, there's never just one chapter in your life, right? There are several, and it's all part of a journey. And your responsibility in life is to make sure that you write the best story for yourself. So, and I would say that the key to doing that is one of my core values is being a lifelong learner. And so, if you are someone who is constantly in a mode of learning, for me, that took me through the education process. But then in beyond, I started to stall out while I was growing a FinTech company that helped people trade in the stock market. And the journey in that company, growing it and building it to being on the Inc. 5000 list for 6 years in a row, was a great story. But it was halfway through that process that, as I said, I kind of stalled out. I was not challenged. And it took me to growing from founding that company to joining a community of other entrepreneurs, and peers that really spurred, how they were conquering similar challenges and being exposed to all sorts of new speakers that came through this group. It happens to be called Entrepreneurs Organization. And to those who are in this business and in this industry now with ideas of creating your own company, I can tell you that every founder needs a community like that, a peer group, or what we call a forum of a smaller group of 6 or so people that you can meet with monthly and build a very tight, close circle of trust to share the kinds of things that you wouldn't be able to share with another business partner or even a spouse or certainly an employee. But you could share with someone else who's been and walked through similar, issues like that. And then finally, community, a forum or peer group, and then a coach. For some, that could take the form of a mentor, but a coach who can really turn around and create the space for you to make decisions with the leadership team and the collection of people that you have on board who subscribe to the same mission and vision to prioritize, simplify, start executing in the right way and communicating that. That's all part of it. So that's a brief kind of like how I've been able to go through and answer your question about how do pivots come and what are the ingredients in order to make an effective pivot. I founded a FinTech company that helped people, as I said, trade in the stock market. And the champagne import company grew out of a need to do more once the FinTech company was on solid ground. I kind of turned over increasingly more and more of the day-to-day operations to that management team and found myself yearning to create something that I was equally passionate about. And so my rich cultural French heritage that I was raised in, and we have family that live in France, brought us to the Champagne area. They live in southern France in Nice, but we were visiting in 2018 we were, extremely fortunate to be able to visit France. And on this family vacation, we planned the trip, and you visit the big houses that speak English and do a fantastic job giving you a tour and an explanation of how champagne is made. And so you should do that. It's Disney-like experience. It's absolutely amazing. You're like, oh, wow, I get it now. But I wanted to go beyond, because a lot in our group could speak the language, that I found some additional smaller owner growers, farmers, frankly, who hold back and don't sell the harvest to the big houses that we all know and that are marketed to us here in this country. They hold it back and they say, no, I'm going to make my own and put my own, name on this label and make stuff that I want to drink and that my friends would want to drink. And I was like, yeah, that's the stuff I want to try. And the first one we went to was kind of mid, like meh. And then the second one, we were just so blown away by the quality of the champagne and the life that was in it, just there at the cellar door, let alone how we would bring it over later to the U.S. And I just pulled out a cocktail napkin and I asked him, have you ever exported to the U.S. before? And now, since become my friend, was like, no, we don't. I said, great. Well, I will build a company around this and build a brand and bring it into the country to share with others if you make me your exclusive importer. And it took them all of 30 seconds to go, okay, let's do that. So I spent the next year building the supply chain and getting the licensing and the federal, everything that's needed to kind of make that go. And then COVID hit, and I was like, this is great. I actually looked at it like an opportunity. If you can survive, a 9/11 event or a global pandemic, then you're almost assured, a solid resiliency, because it's those companies that start at peak froth in the economy, with great assumptions to go even higher. They get washed out, when something bad happens, a banking crisis or a terrorist event or a global pandemic. You just get washed out because you started at the very top. If you start, at the bottom or just as it's coming down, I was like, all right. So we switched. We did virtual tastings. And those were fantastic. And we're starting to bring back some of the things that we did during COVID, because they were so satisfying, and the world has somewhat changed to move to a more, virtual and experience. And so we would ship bottles, and these virtual tastings that we did I think we did 10 sessions. I had, there were chefs that were out of work. So I brought in chefs, to kind of create recipes, and we gave the recipes out. And in some cases in the local markets, you could pick up the food, and people would pick up a bottle, and we would all share on a Saturday at 5:00 Eastern, which was a time where you could open the bottle and nurse it the rest of the evening and be just right. And I had American Idols. I had contestants on The Voice that were happy to here's a bottle, come in and join us for an hour, play our intro, play our outro, and just be another person and, to share the experience. And I didn't want to be the one talking all the time. So anyway, the company started to grow, and we built out and started to sell, the champagnes that he had. Not enormous production, but then again, I didn't have the biggest goals to get huge fast. And so we've since added a second producer, and we'll be starting to add more, which is great. And but there are challenges even in that business. And so you face every challenge, and you just, because you're measuring things, you know that it's a problem. And you work to pivot, you work to find, ways that you can change to avoid this pain and the red light that's flashing, on your dashboard about what the business is doing. And I've been able to do that by associating myself with better and stronger partners. And, we can go into detail and more about that, but that experience, and all the experiences that I've had growing the FinTech company, growing the champagne company, and having the privilege to lead other entrepreneurs and business leaders in my positions of leadership in these communities that I put myself in, have afforded me tons of experience that, I use, and that I now give, or I apply to this coaching, growing, business growth coaching practice that I've started. And it's not to say like, God, how do you do all this? I mean, again, the FinTech company has run, is now off of my books completely. It's run by the management team, and I don't, have any operations in it. I'm an investor in it, and it, may it go and on and on. But it's really the champagne company that now has more stable partners that participate in the business. And it allows me then just to take these lessons and do what I do most. I love, as I've done in my leadership roles, I love moving people through change for the better.
I love what you're saying about moving people through change, because so many times new leaders struggle with this, entrepreneurs struggle with this, existing like big top leaders struggle with this, right? And it's something that, even throughout my career, you think, oh, I've got it. I know how to manage people through change. And then something whacks you square in the forehead, and you're like, oh, this is different, and I need to learn something new. How do you kind of help entrepreneurs through your coaching, or even like maybe like how you've helped people that have reported to you in your FinTech or in the wine company, on how to overcome that, how to grow, how to become a better asset to the organization through that growth?
Yeah. When every new employee, every new team member who comes on has a conversation with me about, and that I encourage others to have, with their hires as well and their teams. It's the second of my core values. So I talked about lifelong learning, and my second is having an outward mindset. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? An outward mindset in your role anywhere in an organization, at the top, as on the leadership team, or in a department, anywhere, is the recognition that, especially within the organization, you're not competing, but your output for any given task or project is someone else's input. So mm-hmm. get to know who that quote unquote client or customer is within the organization that you are, that you're putting your name on, that you're creating. Previously, if you don't have it, and I've seen it, we score all this as well. It's like, if you don't have an outward mindset, it's more like, look, I get the job done and I throw it over the cubicle wall, or I hit send and it's done. I'm on to the next thing. Very task oriented. And that serves less and less the overall, those things that, unless you're actually told what the next task is, you're not helping, to do more than what's really required. Where everything in business now and all the changes that are happening in it require all of us to kind of think beyond what we're doing as part of a larger context of what needs to be done. And what needs to be done is something that hopefully is communicated all the way from the top down, to say, we're on this mission, and this mission is greater than ourselves. So climb on and know that you're making an impact. But even more specifically, your role hits this target that rolls up and allows us to achieve this thing that we're wanting to do in the next year, or this quarter, or in the next 90 days. So again, hop on board, because it all feeds what, I can talk in a moment about our and should be some clearly impactful things that a company is doing and associates itself with. So that outward mindset is what's really key. And then no matter where you are on the level of the organization, build the peer relationships mm-hmm. That foster trust. And that can mean like going out, after work, or no, just being able to share the full person, your whole self, with someone else, and to do that across departments is great, beyond even just the team that you're on. Gives you that bigger picture, gives you this ability to say that, wow, the work I do impacts, and this is everything from like the way sales and marketing would sometimes be sources of conflict in the past. In the organizations that I've either coached or that I've been privileged to lead, this is always like, you serve this client because your output is their input, and we want to take care of that. Same thing sometimes with legal and HR. There's legal says no, and HR wants to do that. Well, shouldn't be in conflict. No, we're here to serve what we're trying to do in HR, which is build and find the best team that we can. Let's make those things work together and create a sense of service and client within the company.
Yeah.
The same way. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, when you were talking through, understanding who is receiving your output, the first thing that popped into my mind was standing in front of a trailer that was being loaded, that was going to Hawaii, and on the top of that load, they had like basically a pickaxe. And I'm like, okay, so that thing has to go on a truck to go to the port, to be pulled by a crane, to get on a boat, to go across the ocean, to be offloaded. Do you think that axe is really going to be where you put it? Like by the time the store opens it, it's going to hit somebody in the head, or it's going to damage something below it. Like, so even just from being a loader of a truck, having that mindset is key. And I know that's kind of like the extreme, but it's the throwing things over the cubicle wall. It's the not being willing to step up. That's where I think companies, but also like organizations and teams within a broader company start to fail. And so I love like having that servant mindset, because you can truly win when you think of the whole picture, not just your own little piece.
And if the whole picture is great, but if you can just think of the next step in the process, it can be the picture could be just who takes it from here, and I better make sure that they, they're a raving fan of it, and that I think through what they're trying to solve, so I can anticipate and say, look, I thought through this for you, and now this is the easy button, oh my God, thanks.
Exactly.
Let's go out for a glass of champagne, for crying out loud.
I have a very long history in supply chain, over 25 years. And we were talking in the green room about you're getting ready to present at a home delivery conference, which is really exciting. That final mile piece is that impacts everybody who listens to the show or watches the show, right? How have you leveraged supply chain, in your career? And I mean, obviously that's a big thing in what you're doing, shipping from France, bringing it stateside, keeping temperature controlled, and getting it to a customer's door or to a restaurant or wherever. How have you, like being that lifelong learner, really got into supply chain and how it can actually help a business get better?
Yeah, well, you bring up a key, a key element of the value of the platform that we built at Avid Vines. So Avid Vines is a platform, and it's easy for us and everyone else to think through what we do. We're not just an importer. We're an importer that's created a platform, and the platform serves three groups of people. First, it serves the end consumer with a product that is certified organic and sustainable. So it's made in a way that doesn't have chemicals sprayed on it during the growing process, or nitrates put in the ground to boost the yield and all that. That can express themselves in the juice later and cause in the body a histamine reaction, inflammation, a headache, right? So we avoid all that by having this certification that's expensive, but it's an audit, 90-point audit for the air, the land, and the water, and results in this certification. The second is a product that is so clean and relative is somewhat unstable. And when I say unstable, it's more like delicate. That if you put it into a regular container, of which, when you consider all the wine that goes from Europe to the US, only 5% is ever put into a chilled container. 95% is just in a regular container because it's twice the expense, and it's at the level, or for all the champagnes that are marketed to us at the back of magazines or in the stores, and it's within arm's reach, yeah, you're getting champagne, but you are getting, champagne that's purchased grapes, that's got all sorts of treatments put on it to get the most yield in order for the farmer to make the most money. And while the area is, quote unquote, more committed to sustainably making champagne, there's still there's a lot done to make sure that it's the greatest yield. And when it's put into a regular container, it can wilt in the supply chain. 6 weeks on the water, 2 more weeks in stuck in traffic at the ports. And what you get it is dulled. And we all know this intuitively. If you've ever had the good fortune and privilege of being in a vineyard and tasting the product at the vineyard, it tastes 10 times better than when you eventually bring it home or have the same wine that you bought from the store and have at a restaurant or even at home. And that's because the voyage takes its toll. By putting it into a chilled container, it's like we break the distance. And so you're able to enjoy the champagne as if you were drinking it from the cellar door. And even if it spends an hour in a truck or, as it's delivered to you and mailed to you that you can order online, it's delivered, that's a day or 2 days, even an hour. And that's much better than 8 weeks on the water like that, just under grueling temperatures for every month of the year, except for maybe 2. I say all that to wind back and say that's the consumer. That's who we serve on this Avid Vines platform. The second group are the producers. Mm-hmm. And the producers are obviously very keen on having their product that they've lovingly created preserved or safeguarded from these elements of the voyage. So they love that we take care of their product by putting it on a chilled container. And then the third constituency or group is the trade, right? Mm-hmm. So it used to be, for me, state distributors, retail stores, restaurants, and that's the case in my home market here in Georgia, in Atlanta. And as a result, we're in Michelin-starred restaurants with these beautifully crafted. And in some ways, I know that we've tipped the scales for those Michelin, reviewers who literally saw wines that are like from, the smallest of places that you could possibly, like, oh my God, how did they find this? Well, hey, we contributed to, these guys have got good taste and we made our point. And I think I know in one case we pushed the scale to giving them that star. But as part of pivoting and learning, Georgia is really the only state I do this in. I have pulled the state-to-state distribution from everywhere else because when you're a small company and representing small owner growers, the gears of each state's distributor and the reps, they're all wonderful people, but they're incented only to deal with larger companies with bigger budgets to pay the bills and to get the end caps and to, sell in a way that's so supported by like air cover of marketing campaigns, billboards, and the rest, that there's no bandwidth for anything else. And good luck trying to tell the story of beautifully crafted, owner, farmer, fizz, and from multiple generations with certifications of organic and sustainability and brought over in a chilled container. Try passing that message through a distributor's sales rep to the wine store or the general manager at a restaurant, who then tells the clerk or tells the wait staff, who then can try to convince, or say something nice at the table in those frenzied minutes of ordering on a Friday or Saturday night where it's prime time. And it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And when the occasions that it does, they're just so few, and it takes such an expense to get it to that level, that we sell the wines and champagnes now online from our website at avidvines.com. And then we also sell the wines to online wine retailers, wine clubs throughout the country. So we supply them with these amazing champagnes. They tell the story quite effectively, from our notes and theirs. And boom, you're able, not only is the customer closer to the product in taste because it's been refrigerated, but they're also closer to the story, having it preserved and it's an amazing thing. Like, we've built a supply chain in this modern country and economy to deliver products wherever we go. But what about the stories that are associated with them? Those can get lost, which is, I think, one of the big things about e-commerce. And that is a revelation I have with you right now, Marianna, when I'm going to speak at this conference, next month. And that is, the products get fast and sent, but the stories can get lost. So how do we build that story? That's in part of the unpacking experience, and it's also part of the leverage by an online kind of filler or explainer when people are interested in order to see something and, oh, I'll click on that QR code and get more of the story.
Yeah. We've got only a few minutes left, and I'm really curious. I don't ask this every time. I do ask this a lot of the time, though. If you could go back, David, and talk to yourself from 5 years ago, like what advice would you have given yourself knowing what you know now?
Oh, well, I would probably say, pivot faster, get to this, get to this learning, find the who that you need instead of suffering under the how am I going to get this done? That's what a team is for. And that's what, don't solve this on your own. I mean, you're going to need to solve this on your own, but don't try to fix it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. A lot of times it's like people walk away with, how am I going to do this? Like you mentioned, versus like,
who's going to do this?
Who's going to do it? Or just, getting it done is different than leading to get there. And I love that. Like, who do you bring at the table? And we started with this part of the conversation as well with you all, everybody needs this board of advisors. You need that mentor group around you, right? And it all comes back together to that of pivot faster and bringing the right who to the table. I love that.
Yep. Community, peer group forum, and get a coach.
Yeah. I mean, we get a coach to work out, right? So people should have coaches for all aspects of their life, right? So now, those that have listened to this are going to be like, oh my gosh, number one, I need to get a bottle. Number two, like, I really love, David's story, what he's saying, his message, like, I want to be part of this group, or I'm interested in more of like how you've done this. Best way for people to reach you. And I know I'll add into the show notes as well, things like your LinkedIn profile and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that the best way for people to reach you?
It really is. Especially, I do a lot of content from there. The Avid Vines website is great. The Instagram tells stories of how to enjoy the champagne and thrive. Share it and then celebrate a shared moment and thrive in the next. But LinkedIn is where I put a lot of these, business nuggets and related to both the growth coaching practice and even some of my, experience again, leading companies, right?
Yeah. No, this has been a lovely conversation. And I always love having my handy dandy pen, writing notes. And I wanted to highlight a few of them. And you kind of highlighted like two of your like life guiding lessons, right? And one is being a lifelong learner, and the other one is, having an outward mindset. So that lifelong learner piece, is you've joined groups, have your own mentors, you have your own coaches, and you learned a lot, especially through the entrepreneur organizations that you have been a part of. And now you want to give back. You want to be able to help others through your own group, to be able to help those entrepreneurs form and build that circle of trust that they need so they can continue to grow. And then the number two of like having that outward mindset is, recognizing within your organization who's next in line after you. Who are you throwing? What are you throwing over the cube wall, and how is what you're doing, your output, going to impact them and their ability to kind of continue to move the vision of an organization forward? Yeah. I love how you talked about if you're starting a new business, you're making that pivot, and sometimes you get slammed in the face with something like a COVID or a 9/11 or whatever the case may be. If you're able to survive that, you're now setting the stage to be able to survive most anything. And you did that with, Avid Vines, and you created these curated experiences that were kind of unmatched, right? Where you're creating memories for people through even the virtual wine tastings that you talked about. Like, that's exciting. That drives, I think, excitement of, even in what might seem like a dark moment in an industry, there are opportunities. Like, you never waste a good crisis, is one of my former leaders used to say. And you definitely did not waste a crisis by what you created through those moments. So those are some of the highlights I wrote down. I think the big thing is pivot faster, get the who around you to help you move forward with what your missions are, either on your individual team, your larger company, if you're an entrepreneur. Like, being able to get those who people around you is key.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Might in Motion. Remember, every step forward counts, and the power to create momentum starts with you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It makes a huge difference. Until next time, stay inspired, stay mindful, and keep moving with might.